think it wins him admiration among younger conservatives who want to see leaders kind of punching back in these internet forums.
Now let's discuss JD Vance, the President of the United States, who's a prominent figure in the Trump administration.
Have you said thank you once this entire meeting?
Times.
No, in this
Even
entire
today.
meeting, have you said thank
Even
you?
today.
You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
Well, he makes headlines, doesn't he? This week he's suggested that Europe should have done more to stop the US-led military intervention in Iraq, and that the prospect of a US-UK trade deal is maybe likely to happen at some point, we are told, in the very near future, perhaps. Now, the future venture capitalist wasn't always a Trumper, and the president has rebuffed the idea that he could be his successor. So, what drives JD? Ian Ward is a reporter for Politico who covers the American right. Ian, what are we to make of JD Vance? First of all, let's start with what he used to say about Donald Trump. Why did he change and when did he change?
Yeah, well, famously, he wrote a memoir in 2016, Hillbilly Elegy, which traced his childhood growing up in Appalachia, or actually in Ohio and in part in Appalachia. That sort of allowed him to break onto the national political scene, and at that point, he was vocally anti-Trump. He at one point called Trump cultural heroin, a kind of cheap high that people were using to block out the pain of their lives. But he sort of underwent an ideological evolution between 2016 and 2020. I think he radicalized a little bit due to his proximity to some online right-wing spaces. And by 2022, when he ran for the U.S. Senate, he was vocally pro-Trump and aligned himself with the MAGA movement.
And was that when he grew close to one of the Trump sons? I think is it Don Jr.?
Yeah, Don Jr. in 2022 helped broker a kind of peace between him and Trump. Trump had been critical of him in response to his criticisms of Trump, and he met Don Jr. through some operatives in the MAGA world, and Don Jr. brokered a peace between him and Trump Sr., who ultimately endorsed him in that 2022 Senate run.
How can we compare him to other vice presidents? One of the criticisms of Kamala Harris was always that we never heard from her, we never saw her, we never knew what she was doing. You can't keep this guy off our TV screens.
Yeah, I think he's been very, very prominent in the administration, very vocal. They're using him both as a kind of attack dog for Trump, which is a pretty typical role for a vice president, but also as a little bit of a explainer of the administration's more heterodox policies. You know, Vance is supportive of things like tariffs and these hardline immigration policies, and he has a way of appealing to, you know, the Times reading class and explaining some of these and justifying some of these actions that Trump himself doesn't have. So I think that in part accounts for his visibility.
Is he genuinely close to Trump? Do we know?
It seems as though he's, you know, in the room for a lot of these discussions. I mean, we got a little bit of a view into this via Signalgate, or the leaked group chat about the strikes on the Houthis, where, you know, Vance was registering his reservations about one of the administration's military decisions. So it certainly seems like he's in the room and participating in these discussions and weighing in on them. You know, I think his voice probably carries about the same weight as any of Trump's advisors, which famously he has this kind of team of rivals approach to decision making. So I don't think the vice president's calling the shots by any means, but he certainly seems to be a voice in the room.
Yeah, okay. I mean, for what that's worth, because does Trump, is he one of the people that has a tendency to just swallow whatever the last person he's spoken to has told him?
Yeah, I mean, that's the reputation. I don't know exactly. I mean, I think you are seeing that the second Trump administration is more aligned with the brand of conservatism that JD Vance has long represented. You know, the first term, he was surrounded by a lot of sort of more conventional conservatives who tried to rein him in on some of the trade initiatives, who softened the edges of his immigration crackdown, who were not as aggressive in their retaliation at Trump's political enemies or perceived enemies like universities and things like that. Vance has always been allied with the more hardline wing of the party, and that seems to be reflected in the administration's policies. So insofar as Trump himself now seems to be listening to the advice of the Vance wing of the party, I think you are seeing some impact from him there.
So everything JD Vance does, it is and says it's done with Trump's permission. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean that's the chain of command. He is second to Trump. I think they give him some free rein to, defend the administration's policies online. He's a very active user of X, formerly Twitter. I don't think they're proofreading all of his text necessarily or his tweets, but yeah, certainly he falls below Trump in the chain of command.
Yeah, I mean, but he does pick some peculiar fights. I think he was arguing with the Tory politician and podcaster Rory Stewart a couple of weeks ago about claims that Rory Stewart's IQ was very low. I mean, this is sort of low-grade, slightly preposterous stuff. What's he playing at?
I think, he's always been very online. I think his politics were cultivated by the term is shit posting. Apologies for the language, but a kind of pugnacious online persona has always been sort of central to who he is. I think it wins him admiration among younger conservatives who want to see leaders kind of punching back in these internet forums. So, I mean, Trump famously a poster, has always been very online. Vance is the same way. Yeah.
Okay. So I think he came to more prominence in this country when he made that extraordinary speech. I think it was in Munich, wasn't it, where he really worried about the lack of freedom of speech in the UK, which, coming from a current American vice president, is really pretty hard for many people in Western Europe to stomach. But that was all part of his plan, was it?
Yeah, I mean, I think he is very critical of two things. One is what he perceives to be Europe's security dependence on the US. He recently, just yesterday, I believe, gave an interview to the British publication Unheard, where he said it's not good for Europe to be a vassal state of the United States. It's neither good for not good for Europe or the UK, or it's not good for them or the United States to have that arrangement. So I think he's sort of critical of the security arrangement between Europe and the UK and the US more broadly. But even beyond that, he's very skeptical of this whole rules-based international order, the kind of system of free trade and military alliances and flows of global capital that have structured the international world since the end of the Second World War. I think he thinks it's been a bad deal for the United States.
So is he consistent there? Is this what he's always thought?
Yeah, I mean, so long as he's been articulating, what could be perceived as a foreign policy view, it has been critical of the international order. I mean, that in some respects dates back to he served in the Iraq War as a Marine in 2005, which was this war to uphold. He was told, at least, that it was a war to uphold sort of democracy and global values. And when he got there, he said he thought he had been lied to by the administration. So he's always been skeptical of the kind of neoconservative foreign policy that was the core of Republican foreign policy for many years. That at least is consistent. I think he's expanded that into a broader critique of the international order in recent years, but that has always been a kernel of his foreign policy thinking.
So briefly, if you can, Ian, is he likely to succeed Donald Trump?
I think he's more likely than anyone else within the Republican Party at this point. I mean, a lot can happen between now and 2028, but he's certainly in the catbird seat to succeed Trump.
Yeah, although Trump has said he himself doesn't think it's likely to happen. Does that matter?
I don't know. I mean, a lot's been made of that comment. I don't know how much we should read into it. I think there's a taboo against formally endorsing a successor in the first 6 months of your second term. I wouldn't read too deeply into that comment. I think it was sort of perfunctory, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I guess we should all learn not to read too deeply into anything Donald Trump says about just about anything. I mean, we need to bear in mind, of course, that Donald Trump's a very old man. I mean, he's nearly 80. Whatever he might say about what his doctors have told him, he doesn't look in peak fitness. JD Vance is right there, and it could be him this time tomorrow, for all we know.
Yeah, I mean, it's true of every president. Their lives are sort of perennially in danger. So, yeah, I mean, that's what you pick when you pick a vice president, is someone who you think could step into the role at a moment's notice. So I think insofar as he chose him for his vice president, he sees him as a viable substitution